My name is Darlene. It was an ordinary Tuesday in October when my receptionist told me two people were waiting in the lobby, asking for me by my full name. I stepped out, still in my work coveralls, reeking of antiseptic and hay, and there they were. My mother looked so much smaller than I remembered. Her hair was now completely gray, and her hands nervously twisted the strap of her purse. My father stood a step behind her, just like he always did when he wanted my mother to speak first. For a moment, none of us said a word. Then my mother uttered my name as if it were a question, as if she wasn't certain it still belonged to me. They said they'd seen an article about a rural clinic saving a herd during a flood, my clinic, with my face in the photo, and they'd driven 6 hours to find me. My mother's eyes immediately went to the framed photos behind the front desk, me stitching up a colt, me elbowed deep delivering a calf, me laughing with my staff at the annual county fair booth. She asked if this was really mine, and I simply said yes. My father, almost accusingly, asked how I'd managed all this without them. At that moment, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. I decided to tell him the truth. I told him that Uncle Henry had been there for me every single day for 14 years, never once making me feel like the twin who wasn't good enough. My mother's face crumpled, and she started her well-rehearsed explanation. She said they thought they were doing what was best. That my twin sister, Daisy, needed more attention back then. And that Uncle Henry had offered, and it seemed like a practical solution. I let her talk until she ran out of words. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my mind, why now? Why show up 9 years later at my clinic instead of ever coming to a school event, a graduation, or a birthday? My father looked away. My mother said Daisy was struggling. Her marriage had ended, and she'd lost her corporate job in a round of layoffs. Somehow, in the middle of all this, they'd remembered they had another daughter who might have money and a guest room now. I looked past them through the clinic window at Uncle Henry's old truck parked beside mine in the gravel lot. He still stopped by most Tuesdays to check on the horses I boarded for him. I thought about all the parent-teacher conferences he'd sat through, all the fences he'd taught me to mend, and all the nights he'd stayed up helping me study for exams I once thought I'd never pass. I thought about that 12-year-old girl who packed 2 suitcases and waited for a car to turn around that never did. Standing there in my own clinic, built with my own hands and Uncle Henry's unwavering belief in me, I realized I didn't owe them the explanation they'd come for. I told my parents that I was glad Daisy had people to lean on and that I hoped things got better for her. I truly meant it because, after all, she was still my sister. But I made it clear that this clinic, this life, and the name on the door weren't something they could just walk in and claim a piece of after 9 years of silence. My mother started crying, but for the first time in my life, it didn't affect me the way it used to. My father just nodded slowly, as if he'd known this was coming the moment they drove past the county line. They left without asking for money or anything else, and I watched their car disappear down the same kind of road that had once carried me away as a child. This time, I was the one standing still, and they were the ones driving off with nothing. That night, I called Uncle Henry and told him everything. He didn't say much, just like he never did. But at the end of the call, he said something I'll never forget: they didn't lose a daughter that day, Darlene. They lost the chance to know the woman you'd become. Let me take you back to when it all started. I was 12 years old. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table and told me I was going to live with my Uncle Henry. They didn't call it what it was, they called it a better fit. My twin sister, Daisy, sat across from me that night. She was already accepted into the gifted program at our school and was always the one my parents introduced first at every family gathering. I, on the other hand, struggled with math, needed extra time on tests, and would cry in the bathroom before spelling bees. My parents never said the words out loud, but I heard them through the walls, through half-shut doors, and in the silences that followed report card season. Daisy was going to achieve great things with her life, while I needed a different kind of help. Uncle Henry needed someone to help on his farm in another state, and somehow, that became the solution. I packed 2 suitcases. My mother didn't shed a tear when she dropped me off. My father shook Uncle Henry's hand as if they'd just closed a business deal, and in a way, they had. Uncle Henry wasn't my father's brother by blood. He was my mother's much older cousin, a quiet man who ran a small sheep-raising operation outside a tiny town that didn't even have a stoplight. I remember standing in his gravel driveway that first night, watching my parents' car disappear down the road, hoping they'd turn around. But they didn't. Uncle Henry didn't say much as he carried my suitcases inside. He just told me which room was mine and said breakfast was at 6 o'clock. I lay awake that whole first night, waiting for someone to come get me. No one did. The first few months were the toughest. I missed Daisy more than I missed my parents, which confused me for a long time. Before all this, Daisy used to sneak into my room at night, and we'd talk about nothing until one of us fell asleep. Now, all I could hear was the wind against the barn and the sheep shifting in their pens. Uncle Henry wasn't the warm, huggy type like you see in movies. He didn't tell me everything would be okay. But he showed up every single day. He taught me how to check the fence lines, how to tell when a ewe was about to lamb, and how to fix a water pump with just a wrench and patience. He never made me do math in my head or made me feel stupid for reading slowly. He just gave me tools and trusted me to learn. By the time I was 14, something had changed in me. I wasn't the slow twin anymore. I was the girl who could tell which she was sick just by the way she held her head. Uncle Henry noticed, too. He started taking me along to appointments with the local large animal veterinarian, Dr. Lily Thompson, who ran the only practice within 60 miles. She let me hold the stethoscope and ask questions that no one at my old school ever waited for me to ask. For the first time in my life, being curious felt like a strength, not a weakness. My parents called on my birthdays for the first 2 years. Then it became just Christmas. And then, nothing at all. Daisy wrote me letters for a while, telling me about her honor roll certificates and her debate team trophies. I wrote back less and less, not because I didn't love her, but because our lives had drifted so far apart that I didn't know how to explain sheep shearing and lambing season to a girl in advanced placement classes. Uncle Henry became my rock. He paid for my school supplies without me even asking. He sat through every awkward parent-teacher conference at my new school, even when the teachers were confused that the man beside me wasn't my father. When I brought home a science fair project on ovine respiratory patterns instead of a poster board volcano, he drove 40 minutes to buy me a proper microscope. By the time I was 17, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian, just like Dr. Thompson. I wanted to be the person a scared farmer called at 2 o'clock in the morning when a ewe was having trouble lambing. Uncle Henry didn't laugh at my idea or tell me it was unrealistic for a girl who'd once needed remedial reading help. He just said, "Then we'll figure out how to pay for vet school." And we did. Through loans, through scholarships I never thought I'd qualify for, and through years of him co-signing paperwork. He believed in me more than my own parents ever had. The girl who wasn't considered smart enough to keep was about to become the only doctor for 50 miles of farmland. By the time I turned 26, I had my veterinary license, a brown truck with Darlene's rural animal practice painted on the door, and a reputation that spread further than I'd ever imagined. Uncle Henry stood in the front row when I hung my diploma on the clinic wall he'd helped me build on a piece of land he'd gifted me the year I graduated. Dr. Thompson had retired by then, and half of her old clients simply transferred their trust to me, the girl who used to hold the stethoscope for her. I had a small staff, a long waiting list of ranchers, and a life I'd built from nothing but determination and the support of a man who never gave up on me. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 9 years and to Daisy in almost 5. It wasn't out of anger, it was just the distance that had grown into something neither of us knew how to break. And then, that fateful Tuesday in October happened, leading to the encounter I described at the beginning. If a story like this touches you even a little, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned because there are so many more stories like mine waiting to be told.